Hello, my name is Warren Barrow, Principal Consultant with CA Technologies. I'm here to talk about identity mapping capabilities within SiteMinder 12.5. Before we dive into the new capabilities, let's review some of the basics. Authentication and authorization mapping has been around for quite some time. This legacy capability was introduced in prior versions of SiteMinder that allows an organization to authenticate users against one directory, let's say a centralized corporate LDAP server, and authorize those users against a different dataset, such as a database. This feature remains very useful for organizations with a SiteMinder environment that use a centralized policy store and authentication store, yet have business units with their own authorization stores. Now let's take a look at identity mapping. Introduced in SiteMinder 12.5, identity mappings provide greater flexibility than the legacy directory mapping methods. Identity mappings let you configure multiple target user directories and use custom search criteria. More importantly, identity mappings allow you to map an authentication directory that is connected to one policy server to an authorization or validation directory that is connected to a different policy server. During my demo, I'll show an auth validate identity mapping to map a user's identity from one user store to another. My policies are configured so the finance application only uses Active Directory as its authentication and authorization store. SAM account name has been configured as the universal ID, which will help us map the user's identity to CA Directory's UID attribute when attempting to access the marketing application, or the database's first name column when accessing the support application. Let's take a look at the demo setup. Within the SiteMinder 12.5 admin UI, we'll navigate to identity mappings under Infrastructure and Directory. Here you'll see I've established 3 auth validate mappings, one for each authentication and authorization store. The simplicity of identity mappings over legacy directory mappings can be seen here. Instead of needing to create a map between each source and target directory, we can simply choose to map from the source directory that is defined within the user's session to a specific target directory. We'll use an identity map on each application's realm to map a user to the realm's configured authentication and authorization store. For example, let's take a look at the finance application. The only user directory defined for this application is AD. If we take a look at the realm's identity mappings, we can see I have applied auth validate mapping for AD. A user that is authenticated and authorized against another directory will be mapped to AD if their account exists. Otherwise, the user will not be authorized. A similar configuration exists for the marketing application. CA directory is the only user store defined, and we'll attempt to map the user to a valid CA directory account. The same for our support application, which uses a relational database. Inside the realm, we have the auth validate identity map set up to map from an existing user session to the user's database account. And now for the demo. Here we'll see that each application is protected. Finance application, marketing application, and support application. I'll log into the finance application. Notice the headers sent by the SiteMinder web agent to the application: auth_dir name, auth_dir server, namespace, and user DN. Now let's take a look at the differences when I access the marketing application. My identity has been mapped from one directory and validated against CA directory. Notice the DN has changed. The support application uses a database and shows the ODBC data source name for the auth.dir server. This concludes this session on SiteMinder 12.5 identity mapping. Thank you for watching.